Random Questions by J.B. Taylor. Mr. J.B. Taylor has tagged me to answer 5 random questions, which I thought was very apropos to do for this episode of our show, simply because we're getting ready to launch our 3rd season of Coffee Break, which is, of course, ironically, 5 questions. So each artist you will see in the coming 14 weeks will answer only 5 questions. So, in a way, this is me kicking off our coffee break, thanks to, of course, Mr. J.B. Taylor for his questions. My questions will be different, but they are random nonetheless. And so, here we go with 5 random questions. Number 1. What fictional character would be boring to meet in real life? Atticus Finch. To me, the man is a hero. He is a genius. He is a man that I would welcome if I was fatherless to have a father figure in my life. He would be that man. But boy, all he does is sit around and read the paper, smoke his pipe, play chess on occasion, and just spout out life lessons. And over time, I think that would get quite dull and boring. So maybe I don't want him as my father figure. I was very happy with the father figure I had in my life. But nonetheless, I think that Atticus Finch would be pretty boring to spend every waking moment and hour with. Number 2. What's the craziest thing one of your characters has done? My antagonist, Jack Casey, in my book, Amongst the Killing, uses a cash register for not the purpose of storing cash. Now, it is involved in a murder scene, but basically he's already killed the guy. The guy's just about as good as dead. But to punctuate it, Jack Casey takes the cash register and pushes it off of the countertop onto the guy's head. He does this for 2 reasons. 1, to get the cash out of the cash register, thinking that that would trigger the mechanism that would open the cash register, instead of just conventionally using the key and pressing the button that opens the cash register. You know, even back in the 80s, those things had those releases. But, you know, he always has to do things the hard way. And 2, to kind of punctuate the fact that he's always in control and that he can do whatever he wants whenever he wants. And when I wrote the scene, I felt like I did so much extensive research on cash registers, especially during the 1980s, which is the time period in which my story takes place, and how heavy they are and how much a pain in the ass they were. I mean, they were really just this unnecessary, daunting thing that adorned every countertop I could ever imagine in every store I've ever been in as a child. And I didn't realize how slide-proof they were and how much it would take to actually do what Jack Casey did. So, to me, that's pretty crazy. There was no need for it. It was him. It was a moment in the book, I think, that is very poignant as to why he does what he does here. So, you know, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it is a turning point. So it means something. So that at that point, it really does do something that really changes the complexion of the story, at least for Jack Casey's character. Number 3, what is something your brain tries to make you do while writing that you have to will yourself not to do? I'm sure a lot of us relate to this, but researching, going down the rabbit hole of the research, you know, you could get easily lost at Google search once you start searching for something and just end up in a rabbit hole that you can never climb out of. Case in point, my last answer, cash register. Why did I have to go any further than I did with a cash register than finding out how heavy a 1980s cash register was and how to open it? I mean, beyond that, why did I have to research the anti-slide glides and the anti-locks and all those things, because I'm crazy and I go down these rabbit holes. I usually spend about an hour and a half starting with the original subject I'm researching, and then it expands into a whole rabbit hole of unbelievableness. It really does. It's just really crazy the things I can do with research. It's kind of like me in a record store, or me in a bookstore, or me in what used to be Blockbusters. I know the kids don't know what a Blockbuster is, but you know, some of us still remember those. I would get lost hours. I would be going in there for one specific purpose, and I would get lost hours and hours into it. And next thing I know, it's night out when I got there during the day. Number 4, what would be your first question after being cryogenically frozen? Where's your bat? Never mind. Number 5. How is your approach in doing so? If you're a pantser who likes to write series, how's your approach in doing so? There's an old joke about a guy who asked the bus driver, "Hey, how do you find the Empire State Building?" And he goes, "Practice, practice." That's how you write a series as a pantser. Practice. Here's one random fact for you. It's always time to go indie now. And welcome to the last flagship show of 2017 here at GoIndieNow. I'm your host, Joe Compton. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate each and every month that you come back and see our show and you leave comments and you guys share it. It's so awesome. Thank you so much for all the love that you gave us this year. It was a great year for GoIndieNow 2017. We debuted a couple brand new shows. We have Indie Insights with Marnie Kate. Go check that out if you haven't checked that out already. Marnie does a great job. She gets down and dirty with indies about their craft and their process. It's awesome. It's a great show. And yours truly was a guest on the last episode, episode 5. Go check that out on our YouTube channel right now. We also debuted This Week in Indies, where we cover the current and ranging topics of the week that was for indie artists in all art forms. As always, we're covering as many art forms as we could possibly cover. So we had that show. We had a season 2 of Coffee Break. We also did, during the summertime, Sunday Fun Day. Those were always fun. Those are some tag games and some things that we did to have fun and interact with one another and promote other channels. So go check that out as well. 2018 is looking to be even better. We have some great things lined up that we'll be telling you about very soon. We have another live This Week in Indies in January, hosted by Christy Stratos, because I will be in Park City, Utah, covering the Slam Dance Film Festival for the middle of January. We also have some other things that we're probably going to be covering as the year goes on, traveling out there and covering stuff, and some surprise and awesome guests lined up for future shows. So definitely subscribe if you haven't subscribed to our channel, and like and comment and share as much as you'd like. We really appreciate it. So one of the things that I used to do as a child, and some of my fondest memories were during the Christmas break or the holiday season from Thanksgiving on, we used to travel. And granted, my family, my father, he loved one place, and that was, well, 2 places really, Las Vegas and Laughlin, Nevada. So we were big fans of Nevada growing up. But those road trips were always fun. Me and my brother made it an adventure. We always had a lot of good times that. And if we didn't go to Las Vegas, we went to other places. But traveling during this time period can be arduous at best, but it can also be exciting and gives you an opportunity to not only spend time and bond with your family, but to see the world and see what is out there. So for our final show of 2017, I thought we would go abroad. This episode, we have artists who have done just that, gone abroad. Either they're currently out there, world, seeing new experiences, or they've immersed themselves in a culture that is not native to who they are, or they've had experiences in the past. So that's our show for this episode. We have Jin Akubo, Jason Greensides, JB Taylor, all coming up with their review segments. We have a great short film. We are continuing a tradition that we started last year, and we'll hopefully continue for a long time to come. As our short film will be something that you may have saw last year, but we're going to make it like our wonderful life for our network. We have John Ward, Jimmy Lee Combs, Heath Hine, and Kevin Ward produced. It has become our flagship for our flagship. It is our annual holiday tradition now. We will be showing it again this episode, so every Christmas episode for a long time to come, I hope that will be the case. And it's a great, funny, short film, so if you didn't get a chance to see it last year, now's the chance to check it out this year. And we also have a surprise for you in terms of we will be on Sunday, if you're watching this on the day it drops, Sunday, December 31st, starting season 3 of our Coffee Break show. And so, if you're watching this on the day it drops, we are going to give you a sneak preview of and introduce you to the first guest of our season 3. So that's coming up at the end, right before the short film. And let's get on with the show, shall we? All right, everybody. You've journeyed a very interesting road to get published. Tell us a little bit about how that all came about.
So I've been working in the design trade for a long time, and writing as part of that work. It's a very important part of that work, publishing in magazines and so on and so forth. So in the last year or so, I've been publishing on Medium, the online publication that's run by Twitter. So I've been basically writing about different issues, and I also write about Italy, and I tell people about what it's like to be there and so on. And these are short nonfiction stories. And I got a lot of positive response for the articles about Italy, so that prompted me to write a story about a young woman who goes to Italy and becomes an expat, and what happens to her there. Now, the story starts a little bit like my own story. I was living in New York, working at an architectural firm, had a boyfriend and a job, and I had this big plan that I was going to go to Italy and find out what makes Italian design great. So that was my plan, and that's what I did. So this fictional story that I wrote just starts at the same starting point, but after that, it's completely invented. And there are some things that I gathered from when I was living in Italy that are in the book, but they're not directly my experiences, or there's something changed about them. So it draws on my experience in Italy. And what I wanted to do was write a book that wasn't the usual, under the Tuscan sun kind of Italian romance where the troubled American woman goes to Italy and all of her problems are solved by this incredibly sexy romantic guy who is totally above board and wants to sweep her off her feet and make her become a countess and install her in the castle. So I think that's kind of what the American public looks for in these kind of escapist romance novels. Basically, I wanted this book to be more like a trip to Italy, so that you could go into this book and put yourself in the shoes of Melinda, or Mel, who is the main character, and follow her through her experiences looking for a job in an architectural firm in Milan. And her boyfriend ends up following her over there and getting his own job in a photography studio. So they both meet people separately from one another, and then these circles start to merge little by little. And for their work, they take little trips. So for example, they go up to Lake Como, and they go down to Rome, they go to the island of Procida, which is off the coast of Naples. And then they also go to a farm near Bologna. So you don't get to just see Milan, which is interesting and unusual to find in a book in itself, but you also get to travel to other parts of Italy and experience the food and the people and the personalities of the people in Italy, whom I love very much.
You touched on it. You were living kind of the book, and or at least where the environment is set in. What was your approach to the research? Was it a matter of you got to go out and explore, or did you just tend to stay within the familiar of what you knew about Italy already?
No. Of course, I lived there for 18 years, so I have a lot of stuff in my head, a lot of people in my head.
Uh-huh.
And for me, it was about architecture and design at the beginning. But then, you know, in Milan is not the most touristy kind of city in Italy. Milan is a business center, and a lot of the creative people are there. It's kind of like New York in that way. A lot of the architects are there. They have an enormous number of architects. A good chunk of the architects in Europe are in Italy, and it's a very common degree to get there. So you have doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, and architect, and they don't have the diversified degrees that we have here. So you can find architects doing things like product design and interior design and graphic design and teaching and writing. So I met this really diversified and humanistic design culture, very deep. And I tried to find out what made them tick. And so I attended a lot of conferences. I listened to a lot of designers speak. And so that was the research that I did for this book. But I also looked up things like wine types and food types for the book while I was writing it, even though I was here in the United States at the time. So I did a little extra research. Now, I also put some Italian words in this book.
Yeah.
They're peppered throughout, and I have a glossary at the end. So whoever reads the book can even pick up a little bit of Italian. So I thought that would be fun.
You could have easily wrote a memoir or a nonfiction book. What ultimately went into the decision? Did you try to do this originally as a memoir or a nonfiction book, or was it always going to be fiction in your mind? And what went into the decision of making it fiction?
I think that my own experience in Italy was actually a lot more difficult than it's portrayed in the book. It was a lot. I was very poor for a long time living over there, and a lot of expats are at the beginning, at least.
Sure.
I made some really good friends who were very generous with me, and I was invited to a lot of places. I went to the Scala, I went on sailboat, voyages, and I did lots of incredible stuff. I felt like I didn't want it to be about me so much. I wanted my sensibility to be in it, but I didn't want it to be about me, and I didn't want to call out people that I knew in Italy and write things about them. It would be very complicated to do that. Mm-hmm. But they definitely fed into the characters that are in the book.
I have a sense that you have a unique perspective on my next question, which is, what do you think writers often miss when writing about their environments or settings?
In this book, I really tried to lay that out, how the landscape is a stage that you're acting out on. So how much the set that you're on influences your behavior. Imagine a romance that's set in Venice and there's a couple on a gondola, for example.
Right.
No, it's really key that they're on this little boat that's in the water. So if you think about it the way a designer would think about it, this is a little vessel that is protecting them and enclosing them, bracketing them together. And yet they're in this hostile environment, which is the sea. And so that forces a sort of intimacy, and people don't necessarily look at the landscape that way. They just say, oh, that's so romantic. They're sitting in a gondola together. They're taking a little they're taking a touristic trip through the Venetian canals or whatever. But for me, the landscape is hugely powerful. Lawrence Durrell, who wrote the Alexandria Quartet, well, he wrote a very interesting article about landscape, an essay, that said if you took all the French out of France and repopulated it, those people would become French too. And what he meant by that was that the landscape really influences the development of the personality of a people.
Mm.
And so with the Italian landscape, and so with the American landscape. And I thought that was so interesting, and it always remained really strong in my mind. So in this book, I tried to talk about the landscape a lot so that people could really put themselves in that place.
Your advice then is the devil's in the details, right? I mean, it's the little things you remember that trigger something else that bring it all together.
Yeah, and that's what your memory is made out of, these little triggers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many times does a writer need to describe a sunset? Or
Right.
can you really do that? I mean, if you think about it, a sunset is something that you need to see, as anyone who's tried to take a picture of one knows. You have to be there. You have to feel the color and the scale of it. You don't get that in a photograph. And if you're going to talk about it in a book, I think the way you need to describe it has to have to do with the way the color is overwhelming and changing, and that you have to be there in that moment, because in 1 minute more it's going to be different, and that sun is going to get wider and strangely flatter and squish itself down over the horizon. So everyone looks at a sunset and sees something slightly different. So if you can't nail down what it is for you, then you're not going to be able to write in a way that's different from the way everybody else writes. I also felt, before I went to Italy, I used to read a lot of, books that took place in England in the 19th century. I loved those books because the English was so beautiful. And a lot of times they would go abroad to Europe and go to Italy. And I was really attracted by the idea of improving myself by going to Europe. I looked up to Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
I saw them as being more three-dimensional and having a deeper experience. And they're also closer together. I'll tell you a funny story. When I went to Italy, and the first time I got on a bus, I sat down, it was empty. The next person who came sat down almost next to me. I thought, wow, in the United States, they would have gone to the opposite side of the bus. So this is really a big difference between Italians and Americans.
What do you like about being indie?
Oh, everything except the money.
Yeah, I think
I'm extremely
everybody would agree with you there.
So, I've worked for companies enough in my life to realize that I don't have the right personality for that, because I get into a situation and I would do things differently, and I just buckle under authority. So it's not really a choice for me. It's what I have to do. The last job I had was so terrible, I was getting panic attacks. And I told myself, if I ever get out of here, I'm taking an oath that I will not compromise anymore, that I will get up every morning and work on my creative vision, whether it's writing or designing or anything else. And so it's cost me, in terms of financial security, but I wouldn't trade my experience for anything else, because I feel like becoming the most interesting person you can be is the most important thing that you can do if you want to be creative. That's your creative act. That's your greatest creative act. That's your gift to the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And if everybody did that, what a great place it would be. So this is my last little message for our indie friends. You have a choice every day between fear or love.
Awesome.
Hello everyone, welcome to another book from JIN'S Books Reviews here at GoIndieNow. I hope you guys all like the beer that's coming in. I pretty much enjoy it, and it's for a character that I'm going to be doing in an upcoming movie that I'm making myself, but that's a different point of view here. Today's book, it was free, let's say that. I went through Amazon Kindle like to get a bunch of free books and raise my reading list before the vacation, so I can just relax and read books while I'm doing my other stuff. And this book, I got it because it was free. I got it because it was cute, the cover. Here you go. Let me get this right up here. A Scone to Die For by H.Y. Hana. It's a mystery, but oh, it's one of those. Yeah. Couple of positive things about this book. You're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna sit down, relax, and it's a nice, cozy little cute story to run your day through, and not run your day through, because it'll take about a day to read. It's not a long book. It's not a particularly heavy book, but it is filled with the classic tropes. It is a book that, in some sense, is a bit predictable, but not always. Still, I think the author, for what they were trying to get at with this book, I think it's almost reads, in my opinion, as one of those old, murder mystery novels that we read when we were kids, and the main character, first of all, let's get the stars out of the way. I'm going to give this book 3 stars because it's very well written, but the characters are lacking, in my opinion. And the lead character, I think, is a bit of a trope. She can do everything kind of thing, and I don't really like that. It's one of the reasons why I didn't like the new Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and why I'm not liking the way they're rewriting the whole story. But that's for a different day. Here, A Scone to Die For. A Scone to Die For. Is a book that you will enjoy to relax with in front of a nice warm fire, or a hot bath, or right before you go to bed. It doesn't provide any heavy mystery solving skills, but it is enjoyable nonetheless. It is cute, and when it needs to be, it is intriguing when it needs to be, but overall the story is fun and you're going to enjoy it. And the best part of it all is it's free on Kindle. Alright, this is Gino Kubo for GoIndieNow, and the book is A Scone to Die For. Alright, get yourself a copy and enjoy your holidays, everyone. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Everyone out there, please enjoy and be safe during these holidays. Thank you very much. This is Gino Kubo. Bye-bye.
Chapter 5, the 30-second commercial. People may hear your words, but they feel your attitude. That's by John Maxwell. Sharing what you do in 30 seconds or less is an art form. You know what we're talking about here, the elevator pitch. You share with someone your entire business philosophy of who you are, what you do, how you do it, and why you do it in the time it takes to go from the first floor to the 10th. There are several concepts and techniques used to develop your brief commercial. The key is to have a commercial that is memorized and repeatable, and most importantly, memorable. In our case, the elevator pitch is approximately 25 seconds long. Here's a sample of our commercial. We help entrepreneurs who are frustrated with not closing enough sales to pay the bills. We provide detailed one-on-one training and instruction to improve closing ratios and help you get paid. Nancy and I work in tandem and identify solutions to your selling challenges. Are you familiar with the lack of not closing enough sales or know someone who could use a service like ours? The key is to communicate your unique selling proposition, your USP. Answer the question, why me? In the sea of those that do what you do, what makes you different? Why should someone else want to do business with you and not somebody else? The unique selling proposition for Nail the Sale is that Nancy and I work in tandem to help solve sales challenges. When a company or individual hires us, they get 2 for the price of 1. That is better than a BOGO at the grocery store. Why is that so important? Because we have different selling styles, and we each pick up on different issues and come at the same problem from different perspectives. That process is very valuable for the person or company that is being coached. We love this quote from best-selling author Seth Godin on the purpose of an elevator pitch. The purpose of an elevator pitch is to describe a situation or solution so compelling that the person you're with wants to hear more even after the elevator ride is over.
Hi, I'm author Sunshine Somerville, and this is a reading from my new book, Alterni. Chapter 1. Ooh, I like that one. We're not picking a puppy, Hakim. Take this seriously. Hakim Safar looked up from the see-through floor of the observation chamber, his hands coolly in his suit pockets. Attractive, lean, and in his early 30s, Hakim had a reputation for being a goofball. Despite this, he was the king's right-hand man, and he excelled at his job. Even the grumpy, portly, hairless man standing with Hakim knew that. Roman, the somber fellow, wore his usual white robes, which made him look part magician, part friar. Roman needs a holiday, thought Hakim. We all do. Sorry, Master Conjuri, I'll be more serious. Hakim returned his gaze to the clear floor and examined the oblivious woman in the room beneath him. I count 10. Yes. Roman's chin scrunched as he looked at symbols on the floor. He pointed to 10, the sand in each vibrating with magic. And Esme Kuchis came from each of these alt-worlds. Anything go wrong with this kimono? No. Roman scowled, the folds of his chin again reminding Hakim of an accordion. Once you make your choice, I can send the others back on a reverse course, same as always. Hakim sighed and continued studying the woman. Is the Illujo spell ready? I mean, obviously the one that disguises the ceiling is working. He tapped his foot on the transparent floor. The Bentaforks illusion is more complicated, right? I still say we should use a real malevolency to test these Alterni. Hakim lifted an eyebrow at the old man in alarm. You can't be serious. We've pulled these unknowing women from their worlds, and you want to throw a real Bentaforks in there before they have any training? It would kill. We don't need to use a Bentaforks. I have Crustacox and Cheeroptorks in the cages. Or we could use a Spinlox. They're relatively docile. Now who sounds like they're talking about puppies? Well, I'd spell the creature to be safe. It's too risky. Owen would never approve. Roman harumphed. I've performed this kimono for 3 generations of kings. Owen's grandfather picked the strongest Alterni I've ever seen, and he tested with real malevolency. Yes, and he was so reckless he got 22 Alterni killed in his lifetime. At least they knew from the start what they were getting into. Roman looked at the women. These Alterni have a dangerous path ahead. Isn't it best to test their mettle right away? Not like that. You know Owen's orders. This brought another scowl. I love the king, but he can't see straight where Alterni are concerned. That's why he sent you to pick, you know. I know, thought Hakim. Unfortunately, Roman's right about that. But to make Owen pick, He sighed. It's a heavy burden. I don't envy the kings. The Master Conjurer grunted in agreement. Things are serious, Hakim. Maybe worse than they've ever been. Owen needs to pull himself together. If we don't pick a strong attorney this time, we might not get another chance. Hakim knew this, too. Roman shook his jowls with a sigh. Well, since we're doing this your way, let's get on with it and start the test. Hakim returned his gaze to the room below. Which woman do I pick? Come on, ladies. Somebody wow me.
Hello everyone, my name is Jin Okubo, and I'm here to introduce my book called Strings. It is a erotica romance book that I wrote with Rebecca Jonesy. So let me do a little bit of intro about how this book came about. And this happened back in the early spring that I was talking with Rebecca Jonesy, and we came up with the idea to write this book together. And the way we wrote it is I wrote a piece, passed it off to her, and as we're writing back and forth, passing back and forth, and editing it as we go. So this allowed a story to actually be fulfilled much better, and I think it worked out very, very well. She and I were almost on the same wavelength when we were writing this book. So now I'm going to go ahead and read a piece of this book so that we can have the story out there. Here we go. No, there's no one, new or otherwise. I've been focused on building my business. That's where I find the most pleasure. His answer came out solid. Find the most pleasure. In work? Either high-class women are super boring in bed, or he's doing something wrong. He finally noticed that she was aware of the way he was staring at her breasts. He jerked his eyes away and blushed. He's blushing. What in the world could he be? She leaned back in the chair, crossing her legs and letting her skirt slide up, showing a length of creamy white thigh. She watched as his eyes darted over again, before quickly turning away, ostensibly checking something on his computer. She ran a hand down her leg, covering herself modestly again. No reason to let him think she had done that on purpose. Neither one of them said anything for a moment. And there you have it. A little excerpt from Strings, a little taste of the forbidden fruit that I would like you guys all to try. And as we get to the end of the year, we all look for those books that we want to cuddle up with and be warm with. And I think Strings is going to do that for you. You're going to be able to sit there and wrap yourself up in a blanket and read this book completely. You guys have a good one now. This is Jin Okubo. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you pick yourself up a copy of Strings.
December 7th, 1941, or in this case 2017, was a big day in history. It was the day that the alliance to destroy the Axis powers was created. And to me, that is a very memorable moment in time because it is what secured the peace that allowed me to be born. And so I think that's a pretty useful thing. Is the reason that I chose today to release book 4 in the Threads of the War series. The fact that it is December 7th and that over 75 years ago we came to the world and realized that the United States had a role to play, was a significant power, and that there was work to be done means that there is an element of humanity in everything that this day signifies. I'm really excited about book 4, and the reason I'm excited about it is because, one, it has inspired me to make all of my books free. The second thing that I'm really excited about in book 4 is that it goes beyond just the short story genre and to the point where I've actually included some poetry from the perspective of Gavrila Princip, which is a step for me, as well as from the perspective of a child in Berlin during the Berlin airlift and blockade. Plexiglass separates my bent frame from the receding coastline below as we head north into the Babuyan Channel towards the Luzon Straits. I hope we find the Japs. Scanning the horizon ahead takes my mind off the reason for this mission, but not for long. Payback. My eyes dart from west to east, searching for the ships heading south towards the Philippines. For all 8 of us, payback can't be pushed out of our heads by any activity, especially one as mundane as searching the horizon. Despite having the best view in the plane, I can't see beyond the cloud cover of the overcast December day. Payback for the attack on the Clark Field right now that forced us to scramble into the sky, only partially loaded. Payback for Pearl Harbor yesterday. Payback for starting this damn war. Smoke at 11 o'clock, Beam yells on the communication system. Damn, I wanted to be the one to spot it. How'd I miss the smoke? I swing my head back towards the west again, seeing a small dark plume rising from the water. Adjusting our heading to target it, Captain Kelly informs the crew. We're out for blood. Theirs. And probably ours. As we're also out here alone. A solar mission to bomb any target of opportunity we happen to find. Just 2 days after the surprise at Clark Field caught most of our bombers and fighters on the ground, we're on a bombing mission to slow down the expected Japanese invasion of the Philippines. That's a big one, hollers Robbins, the co-pilot. Eyeing the smokestack, I can discern an outline of a large ship steaming south as part of a group of vessels. They can only be Japs. We don't have anything that big out here. Targeting the big one. Got that, Levin? Captain informs me. Yes. Roger, Captain. Targeting the big one, I reply. Our distance should be about 7 miles, give or take. I've had the Norden bombsight gyros running since shortly after takeoff. The computer is all warmed up. Clutching in the stabilizer, my right hand grips both the turn and drift knobs, rotating them to change the headings of the plane towards the ship. Adjusting the heading, Levin. Take it easy on that computer, Cap calls out. What does he expect? This is our first combat mission and he wants me to take it easy? Yes, Cap, I reply. Engaging the telescope motor clutch, I lower my right eye to the bomb sight eyepiece, using my right hand to adjust the angle so the ship shows up in the crosshairs of the scope. Steady. Too much angle and I overshoot the ship. Must rotate the stabilizers back. Clutching the vertical stabilizers, I uncage the gyros, allowing the sight to track the ship. Drifting left away from the target. Correcting for the drift, I double grip the turn and drift knobs again, gently nudging them forward. Yes, on target now, but coming in fast. Oh wait, the bomb bay doors. With my right hand, I flip the bay door switch, exposing our 3 600-pound bombs to the world below. Please read Threads of the War Volume 4 and 1 through 3 as well, and share it with anyone that you think might enjoy these stories. Thank you. Bye.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Berman, and I am the author of the RuneSpells series. The first book is Too Weird, and the second book, Fluffy Bunny, just came out about 2 weeks ago. That is what I'm going to be reading from today. The scene I'm going to be reading today is a scene in an airport. Nicola has been asked to investigate a healing center called the Rod of Asclepius. She's decided to go undercover and has asked her friend Detective Ames for assistance. She is still kind of reeling from the events of Too Weird. So without further ado, here it is. I walked through the airport, still feeling the effects of leaving my little girl once again, and looking for someone holding up one of those ridiculous signs you see in the movies. The website actually had a picture of a pretty blonde in a cream linen blouse holding the sign so we could see what to look for. I'd never really considered that people actually used those things, but given the late afternoon crowd, I could see how they helped people find their connection if they'd never met. A man in a business suit shoved past me, nearly knocking me over, dragging his wheeled suitcase behind him. And just like that, I felt it return, like warm oatmeal climbing my spine and filling my ears before warming my cheeks and coloring the edges of my vision with pinkish red. During that hellish week 6 months ago, I'd lost it. I'd snapped from the stress and tried to beat the crap out of one of the walls of our then prison. My vision had gone red, my ears had filled with a roaring sound, and I had literally lost control of myself, hitting the drywall until my hands were so battered they went numb. It had been a terrifying experience. The worst part was that Mercy and Joseph had been right there. They saw, or rather heard in the darkness, what had happened. And they had cared for me after I'd passed out. I'd never lost control so badly in my life, and it was shameful. Mercy had acted odd about it, but not in the way I would have expected. She seemed to be implying there was something important about my loss of control. She hadn't brought it up since, though, and I wasn't eager to replay the experience, so I was still in the dark about whatever she'd been thinking. Unfortunately, the past was not staying in the past. Since that time, I'd been having these random bouts of, well, losing my temper. Not like people pushing and pushing until I snapped at them. More like people doing normal, crappy people things, cutting me off in traffic, bumping into me on a busy sidewalk, not holding the door when I was walking right behind them. Just normal, inconsiderate stuff. And I'd lose it. Not every time. Not even most of the time. Not when I was especially stressed or anything like that. Just completely spin of the wheel, roll of the dice, random times. It scared the crap out of me. I stood still, taking deep breaths, my hands shaking as I pushed the warm feeling down and away. Crap, 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 crap. Deep breaths, deep breaths. Please don't let me lose it. Don't let me lose it. The warmth in my ears finally left, and I could feel the warm oatmeal rage lava draining down the back of my throat. My spine still tingled from the after effects of the feeling, but I was no longer fighting the rage. I sighed and shook my head, blinking away the stress tears from my eyes. Now that it was gone, I could admit that I'd been inches away from chasing that man down and doing my very best to beat him to a pulp with his suitcase. Such an irrational and stupid reaction. Yeah, the guy was being a jerk, but he didn't deserve what I would have done. I stood still a moment longer, making sure I had myself under control. I looked up to see a Hispanic woman in her early 20s wearing a white maxi dress and staring at me with wide eyes. There were 3 men and 2 women standing with her, holding bags and shifting their weight from one foot to the other. A brief glimpse at their energies showed that the bystanders were an anxious orange. The woman, however, was simply wary, calm but alert. I blinked as I realized that the large object she was holding was a sign that read, Asclepius Center Shuttle. I approached the group, grimacing to myself at the first impression I'd given them. Are you going to the center? The woman watched me carefully, despite the warm smile she gave me. I nodded. I'm taking the workshop, I croaked, my throat still tight from my incident. She pulled a pocket-sized notebook and a highlighter pen out of the large bag slung across her chest. What's your name? Nicola, I said. Last name Crandall. She scanned the page, juggling the signed notebook and pen with a practiced grace. She took the lid of the pen in her teeth and pulled it off to highlight a line before putting it back on and dropping both the notebook and the pen back into her bag. She met my eyes with less hesitation than before and with more compassion. Welcome, then. It seems you may need us more than you may realize. My name is Lupe. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I hope that you have found something intriguing about it. You can find more teasers and such on my Facebook page and on my website. Some of my other books include Visions 4, Space Between Stars, A Twist of Fate, collection of 11 twisted fairy tales that will be out at the beginning of January, London Calling, a Quill and Ink anthology that just came out recently, and Chasing Fireflies, a summer romance anthology that came out this summer. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, Goodreads, Patreon. You can find me as Sarah Berman or Author Goddess. AuthorGoddess.com is my website, so you can find me there too. Be sure to check those out as well. Thanks.
What has Europe offered you as far as your writing goes? How do you think you'll be different as a writer having this experience that you're having now?
I'm a big supporter of breaking the comfort zone. Making this move, well, temporary move, was a big jolt. Just when you think of like sensory overload in every regard. I mean, it's studying French and hearing French all day, and the effects of how that affects everything else, and, you know, and the beauty, and onto some galleries. And it really, it kind of leaves something with you. I don't think I've quite gotten it yet, but I'm excited to see where my fiction will go from this experience, because it is just kind of like an essence. And when I first came over here, I wanted to try and write a story that kind of captured that. What should I say? Wow. You know, that kind of between the lines that you can't put into words. I wanted to write a book about. I want to write a book about. So.
From what I read on your blog, it said that you were someone who dabbled in writing at an early age. So what ultimately brought you back into doing it and doing it seriously enough to try and get published?
Taking quite an interest to it, but then it did really just fall to the wayside. And then in my early 20s, I picked it back up, and I found that it kind of really kept me going and got me excited about things. And I just kept with it. And 5 years later, I had written something that I felt was strong, and kind of from there, took it as far as I could.
In reading it on your blog, it seems like the writing process has become like this evolving idea as you try to find what works best for you. Is it a matter of getting comfortable within a discipline, or is there a deeper meaning to your methodology of trying to try all these different ways of trying to write?
Yeah, it is. I've never been traditionally schooled in literature and writing. So for me, it is figuring out my method, kind of playing around and really invoking style and making a unique voices I can get. It's brought me a lot of joy in just kind of figuring out how to make it work.
What's been the biggest reward for you writing in the first person?
For me, first person is it's brilliant. It's fun. It's, you know, you are kind of, in a sense, living out another psychedelic, especially in the case of punk, life experience, you know, like it's seeing the eyes through a character that would do things and try things that you wouldn't do. You know, it's a great way to kind of fabricate an alter ego and throw it into scenarios. I like trying to really convey how someone thinks, and, you know, their thought processes, and they're just, it adds a lot of fun when you have someone go through a set of circumstances and then their thoughts reflecting on it, or even, you know, them trying to digress what has happened.
Having it being named punk, music has played a role in your writing, but has it played a role for you in your process as well? Do you like writing with music? Do you have a playlist? Do you set the mood, or is it something that you don't bother with and you prefer silence?
I am definitely more on the side of silence. If I could wrap a towel around my head and tape it there to just kind of mute out the world. There's a famous writer who did that. There's the whole argument that if you can write in a bar, you can write anywhere. But
right.
I prefer silence. I do listen to quite a bit of music with edits and rewrites, and I like to have something in the background to keep me going. I get a lot of visual draw from listening to music, and I feel like that does translate into my writing.
What do you like about being indie?
I was really facing an upward road with punk and getting it finished and getting it out there, and I had the book memorized, and I was like, I can't, I need to finish this. I couldn't start a new project, and I was just bursting with new ideas that I wanted to pursue. And in putting the book out there, I was able to make some connections, get in touch with someone, a very good copy editor, who approached me and was like, "This is a really good book, but, you know, like, we can make it." And I was like, I know, like, and so it was being indie was great because I was able to work with this guy and turn it around and have these great copy edits and great another brush through. And it was redistributed, and it was the best version of the book out into the world, which I always knew was there, but I just couldn't give it another edit. I was just so done. Yeah. So being indie is just great. I mean, you control all aspects. I'm a business major, and so I just am fascinated with figuring out supply and demand and kind of marketing and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's really fun. It becomes your own little small business,
Do you think that blogging is an effective way of showing your personality, and how has it helped you in your writing process?
It forces you to for me, I was doing it I was doing it twice a week, and I was like, okay, I'm spending more time working on these blogs than I'm doing writing. So I took it down to once a week. And for me, it's been really nice because you have to have a finished, neat, tight package once a week. I think I even wrote to the effect of how I played around with outlines and making it up as I went, or outlining it, and just different strategies. And so it's been kind of like a good crash course in putting out polished content on a regular basis.
Advice would you give someone who asks you how to start a blog, or how to get it to where it benefits you as a writer?
Consistency and write about something you're really enjoying. I meet a lot of writers that tend to just try to focus on doing a blog about writing, but I feel like throwing in other elements just to kind of make sure you can always consistently put something out.
This is a coming of age story, your book. How did you tap into that youthful persona that you've kind of left behind? I mean, especially doing it in first person, you had to really find that youthful. Do you have a trick? Was there something that you did on purpose to get into that mind frame, or to write in that perspective?
It was fairly easy kind of tap in. I mean, it doesn't seem like too long ago I kind of came of age. It's an interesting kind of, it's not arbitrary, but it's an interesting genre because it is kind of like a youthful one-time, like lay with a girl for the first time, or through writing I was able to kind of break out of like the slumminess of my life at the time.
Yeah.
And so I feel like writing about it first person came very naturally because I was able to kind of tune back into that experience.
Hi. This month I want to recommend The House of the Devil, directed by T. West. Came out in 2009. I got this recommendation actually from Travis West, who listed it in a Halloween top 10 list of his. So glad I found this. It's definitely nostalgia for the 80s, in the way that It Follows did a kind of Nightmare on Elm Street vibe really well. The House of the Devil is more influenced by late 70s, early 80s horror. And the opening title sequence is just wonderful. It's just brilliant. So a girl gets invited to babysit at the last minute for a guy and his mother, and it's a horror film. But there's not really too much horror. It's more about the tension and the lead up, which I actually really, really appreciate. It only had that I could tell maybe a couple of jump scares, which is about the right amount that you want for a good horror film. But the first jump scare that I can remember, with a man with a lighter, I don't know, that was just like really, really well directed. It's a great film full of really good acting. The main girl's best friend, they share a scene together in a diner near the beginning, and I thought when I saw that scene it was going to sort of fall apart. She's going to get some real kind of boring acting from the supporting woman, but no, it was really, really good. The climax of the film is pretty much what you'd expect. It's not too surprising, but it's more about the tension and the build-up towards that, and that part of it is really, really good, and you know, it's really well directed. So, and then the twist at the end. Yes, there's a twist at the end, the very end of it, and that is worth waiting for. So yeah, I recommend The House of the Devil. 80s style horror, really good tension, really well directed, and I'd give it a 4 out of 5. Thanks for listening.
So Wendelin, in doing my research before this interview, I kind of got struck by, or overcome by this idea of, I don't know, something always came into my head about the chicken and the egg philosophy, because I'm curious to know, was it your experiences in the cultures that you are writing about that made you want to write, or was it that you were writing already, and upon experiencing those cultures, your writing got shaped into what it is?
It's kind of a mixture of that. I noticed whenever I first started doing ESO, I had more students from East Asia, and having them enter into my life at that time really gave me, it broadened my characters in my stories just through that. So because you have them around, it just feels natural to have them sort of walk into your story. And then after I got involved in studying their languages more, because I was a linguist as a young child, from 13, and I studied 6 languages in high school and college, and I majored in the language, but it wasn't any of the ones that I blog with. And at that point with those students, it was like, you know, and I got more involved with that community as in my corporate day job to some degree. It wasn't the populations that I had studied, it was these new populations. So I just sort of decided to start studying their languages. They encouraged me to. They're like, yeah, you should study English, come to our country, blah, blah, blah. So I thought, yeah, let me do that. And then once I started getting into it, it just felt uncomfortable to make a world where you didn't have them in it. You know, I mean, I'm not from that ethnicity, but I definitely have that, you know, that part of my life now. It's been so huge for decades because that's all I study whenever I'm home. And so it just was natural to have them be there and see things and say things, because that's what I was experiencing in my regular life. And then I'm reading their media and you know, you see everything from their perspective, so it's just natural.
You mentioned you read, you were reading current affairs and immersing yourself in the cultures that you were studying. Did you ever have an idea of maybe taking on one of those stories as a nonfiction basis?
Not at this point. I think that there's just too many sticky aspects to that. Of course, I want to do some online teaching in the regions, because I have a lot of knowledge for the language and culture, and I want to give people the opportunity and also to be able to really convey that, because I think there's not a lot of reach for that academic way in our culture. But no, I think in general, I'm really not interested in the nonfiction side at this point, other than maybe language. You know, I did write a little guide on language and for Korean. And I think I'm probably going to do maybe a few more in that vein under my Lady Sianza Chinese Literary How that I blog under. But other than that, at the moment, I don't know. I just really am not thinking in that direction. I'll probably just do some more fiction. The one I'm working on right now is I'm trying to do a bilingual novel to play around with that and see how that goes, because the people that I'm reading about in these other cultures, it was very typical of the literary class to write multiple languages. It's not very typical in our time and place, but it's just kind of an interesting idea to see, you know, the process, the cognitive process that goes with it, and you know, how maybe you build that.
What do you think us here in the Western culture would embrace or be surprised by in reading about Eastern culture?
Well, one of the things I think from the perspective of my blog is that they don't have a very long development of novelist sort of techniques. So because they didn't, in Confucian culture, they didn't really think of the novel as something worthwhile. So a lot of the years it was not very well developed. And so whenever you read their stories from that time frame before they started being more influenced by the West, where it was a little bit more, the techniques were more developed and all of that, it was much more valued, that you end up having a very jarring sort of presentation of the stories that doesn't follow a normal narrative, and it's just a very different kind of presentation altogether. And in a way, it's a little disappointing because you're expecting this, this really dramatic, and they don't really milk it for drama. They just sort of tell you what happens.
How do you approach the research process? Is it something you do before, after, or during?
With the writing? Oh, definitely during. Sometimes things come up, like the story that I'm working on right now. I decided that one of my characters should know certain type of martial arts from over there, and I kind of know some about it. I know more dance than I know martial arts, so I'm scrambling, thinking, okay, it's only the first draft. I'll fix it all later. But I'm looking for videos to show me like what people do. I'm trying to figure out what the basic items that they would use would be, the basic words and all of that. So it's sort of like last minute for the first draft.
So you're someone who does a little bit of research during the first draft, but really the second and third drafts are when you really start to delve into that.
Yeah, depending on how deep of knowledge I need to have. Sometimes, like I said, whenever I'm planning, I'm not planning on making it be about the culture itself. I'm just about the characters. So when the characters start to go off the page into an area where I don't know anything, then that's when I start to really go, wait a minute.
Is there something that you've researched recently that you were surprised you didn't already know?
Oh, no, in this field, especially with the language, there's always something. In fact, one of the things I find as a linguist is that the further you go into it, the less you seem to know about it. You realize that there's so much more. When do you ever arrive as being the expert in?
How important do you think it is to be authentic, though, in fiction? Is it an important aspect to have, if you're delving into a culture or you're delving into a language especially, is it super important to be authentic?
It depends on what you mean by authentic, because the cultures themselves, they're very, very flexible, especially living languages. Now, if you're talking about dead languages, then yes, everything is very ossified, and that you have a limitation and a very, very strong boundary as to word meanings and all that. But for modern, I mean, part of the big struggle overseas right now in these cultures, because I study 3 languages, Korean, Japanese, and Chinese, is to try to find native words for loan words, because they've borrowed so much from English and so many other major languages in Europe. So authenticity, it really depends. I mean, and then they've got the emoji stuff going on, that they're talking more and more in emoji. They've almost got their own language with the 2 girls now in Japan. So I'm not sure what is authentic at the end of the day. And with a modern language, it's always changing. One thing that I was struck by, I was just watching some anime this weekend, because I speak at anime conferences. I'm going to be at one in a couple weeks, and things like Tanya the Evil, and it's a, what do they call that? An alternate history, but it's still not the cultures of Europe. It's like fictionalized cultures of Europe, totally different names. But you look at the map; it's all recognizable geography. And the main culture that they're ripping from is German. So you can see like the Nuremberg style of the architecture and everything, and all the characters' names are German, but they have a really interesting script that they do that doesn't look like any European language in any of these countries. That they're all fighting this war with mages. It's almost like World War I with a magical angle on it. But okay, so at what point is that authentically European? I think it's totally wild that they do this. I'm fascinated how fascinated they are with these alternate histories of this part of the world during that time frame, because there's more than one of them that I've come across in the 1920s in that region, and like almost a rewrite of World War I and World War II that explores a lot of different things. But I'm not a purist when it comes to these things, so I find that it's really fascinating. I think that that's also one of the reasons why I'm not overly concerned about the genre boundaries and everything, because I have such a very strong influence from that culture in particular, but all 3 of them, where they don't really care.
Do you feel more comfortable jumping around in genres, or is there one that you feel more comfortable writing in?
Definitely like horror, but I don't write, like, I think these days the slasher horrors, that and the serial killer horror seems to be very dominant in this genre, and that's not really my thing. I don't do the splatter. I don't really like ultra graphic violence and stuff. My stuff's pretty clean, and I do usually post on my events where I sell that it's 13 plus. I don't use a lot of profanity. Don't have any super graphic content. It's just very adult themes and darker stuff, but definitely not too outrageous. But no, that was one of the reasons why I decided I wasn't like a real novelist based on the old traditional idea of it, because the idea of me having to consider myself a novelist for one thing, but also that I would have to be in a contract where I would have to write an X number of books in the same type or the same genre. I just want to have the freedom to go, okay, well, today I feel like detective novel. What have I got going? Next year I might want to do, I did a noir after I did the ghost story. So, and it's not even a normal noir. It's a noir with a magical girl with an anime mascot sort of thing. So, it's not the most typical kind of genre blend. Again, the Japanese have totally ruined my mind. That's great. I love it. I thank them totally for that.
Is that what you like most about being indie, is the freedom to be able to write whatever you want?
Yeah, and again, it was an organic process that led me back to writing, because I started to tell you that I kind of got away from it for a while. I did investigate doing self-publishing maybe about 13 years ago and decided, I'm just not going to bother writing again. I had about 10 manuscripts. I threw them in a box under my bed and just said, well, I guess I'm done with that. And I focused on my language, and then I got involved with a lot of the local arts community, with dance and with the film festival, which is, of course, Silkscreen Asian Film Festival and Arts Organization. It's locally here in Pittsburgh. It's Pan-Asian, and we have this whole area. And it just so happened when I decided to do the blog, and I felt that I had enough skill to do all 3 languages and set it up the way I wanted to, there were 2 things that led me back into writing. And one of them was, okay, I work for a Pan-Asian festival. There's a couple of my manuscripts that I put away years ago that fit that geography. And since I was going to write this story maybe anyway based on the setting of my blog, I thought, let me play around with that and see if I can get that workable, if I'm going to reread it and decide if I really want to publish that.
What is your writing process then? Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? And how quickly does the culture come into your thought process when you are writing?
Well, I'm definitely a plotter. I can't be one of those people that's totally aimless, because the story just peters out. I need to have at least a general idea of what target I'm hitting, even if I don't know all the details. Now, when I wrote The Haunting at Ice Pine Peak, which was the first story that I've written in quite a long time, because for a while I decided I was interested in publishing traditionally and doing all that back in the day, and I researched it and decided that it really wasn't for me, and I really didn't, I'm not a novelist by, the standard idea of what that means. And I felt that I'm more of a linguist, definitely, much more maybe an anthropologist in some respects too, even though that's not my formal training, but it definitely is more setting based in this particular story. So when I finally decided I was going to write this, and I was actually, where this story idea came up with The Haunting of Ice Pine Peak, the one I won my award for, was because I was setting up a blog that I wanted to do on language, and I was debating whether I wanted to do it based on a character. I was going to pretend to be a character in this setting, this fictional setting. And it didn't end up being where I wanted to go with it. And then I had this great setting, and I thought I really should write a story in that setting. I don't know what genre I want to do. I changed genres a couple times, and finally came up with I wanted to do horror, so classical ghost story. And so it just sort of it was in a very organic process. Again, it wasn't really something totally planned out. The culture was already there, because the setting that I picked was this mountaintop temple. And once I got the idea of having it be a ghost story, a horror novel, then that sort of took off in that direction.
So has that been the most rewarding aspect of your writing career?
You look at this from the perspective of, I need to be here because, not only because I want to teach and because I want to impart certain things and bring attention to certain aspects of culture and language that people don't think about, but now as a creator, as a woman, whenever all this is becoming controversial, like, do we have enough women in these fields? Okay, now I sort of have a responsibility as I get older to really look at that as well, and to contribute what I have.
Hi, glad you can join me for another indie game pick. Last month I brought you a very fun, somewhat pixelated RPG adventure game. And this month I found just the most awesome an addicting game that I've played in quite a while. It blends all of my favorite things. It has puzzles, it has strategy, it has turn-based action, card collecting to use within the game. So if you are a fan of Pokemon TCG or playing the game live, or you're a fan of Magic the Gathering, or any other card battling game, it has an element of that within it as well. And the game is called Faeria. Faeria. And it's just really, really clever. Basically, what the deal is, you're on one side of the board. I say board because it's just easier to describe it that way. And your opponent is across from you. You have to create a land bridge in order to get to your opponent. But you have to use strategy, which is where the really interesting function of it comes into play, because you have to think about where you put your land, where you position your players. You have to be both offensive and defensively minded. I took a picture of the main page just so I can have everything out for you. The reviews are super duper positive. It was released in March of this year, but already, I mean, it has just 178 recent reviews, but all time since it's come out, it's at 4,270. So it's a pretty popular indie game, and it's free. It's free to play. I mean, they have updates, and from what I could tell, from what I could see, even the updates don't cost anything. If you don't have Steam, or maybe you don't like having to download onto your computer, I don't know. Some people just don't like that. You can get it on the Apple App Store, and you can even get it on Google Play. So they're really just about anywhere you want them to be, this game. So to wrap this up, if you aren't a fan of turn-based games, you'll still enjoy this because of the puzzles, the strategy, and maybe even the card collecting. Who knows? It's a really fun game. It's easy, but not too easy. It provides a fun challenge, and it's something I think you'll highly enjoy, so definitely check it out. So that's it for me. Thanks for tuning in.
Like I mentioned at the top of the show, 2017 was a banner year for GoIndieNow, and we're looking to make 2018 even better, and we're going to start that right away. So we've got some great shows lined up. We've got some great things happening here in the month of January alone that's going to set the table for the rest of the year. I will, like I said, be in Park City, Utah between January 18th and 25th, live covering the Slam Dance Film Festival. I plan to be live on our Facebook page every day that I'm there. So definitely check out our Facebook page. That is where This Week in Indies is. That's where we do a lot of great stuff. So not only here on YouTube, but on Facebook as well. We try and give you something for every platform on social media. So this is something that we do on Facebook. I will be going live there. I might even go live on YouTube a couple times so that we can chat in the chat. Facebook has an interactive chat as well. It's not as interactive as the chat on YouTube, but so we'll mix and match. You'll see me on live at some point. Maybe every day I'll do one of each. I'll do one on YouTube and one on Facebook. I don't know, but you will see me every day talking about the festival, showing you some things, some behind the scenes maybe, hopefully, some interesting things that I find in my adventure over at Park City. Also, don't forget January 18th live, Christy Stratos will be joining us to host This Week in Indies Live. She's got a show I'm sure she's going to have a great show planned and set up for you guys, so definitely check that out and be a part of that. You may even get a surprise drop-in from yours truly. We'll see, but that's how things shape up for January. I've got some other things going on. We have possibly some new shows debuting in 2018. We'll see how that goes. And I myself might have something for you all in 2018 as well. Well, I should have something for you all in 2018. It's a new book, yes. But, and one that people have been anticipatingly and patiently waiting for. So that will happen in 2018. I'm aiming for March, but you know how these things go. So anyway, that's what we've got going on. And now, as I promised, here is the first guest of Coffee Break Season 3.
My name is Jimmy Lee Combs. I'm a writer, director, and producer with Heart and Fire Productions, a company I founded back in 2006. And you can find my work at www.heartandfireproductions.com, and on Facebook, look me up under Jimmy Lee Combs. And yeah, and everything else kind of branches out from those two sites to our projects.
I actually am a little terrified to ask this next question of you. If for people who get a chance to check out Jimmy's work, they'll know what I mean. But if you were a mad scientist and you could actually bring one of your characters to life, who would that be and why?
Yeah, that's another really good question. And I was thinking about that because I do, I've done a lot of horror stuff recently. So I'm like, oh my God, would I want to bring that character into the world? That would be mayhem. That would be bad. There'd be lunatics and psychopaths running around and possessed people. It'd be crazy. But I really went back to my first actually thinking about that a lot, and it's a really good question, and I wrote it down here just so that's something that I wrote for it.
He's not an actor, ladies and gentlemen. He's a director, so he had to read it from
That's right. I didn't memorize my lines. Yes, I acted in a long time, so I got to brush up on my memorization skills. That's right. Be that meet the actor on set line.
I thought it was only fitting that Jimmy Lee Combs be our first guest here on Season 3 of Coffee Break. He is been a monster contributor of GoIndieNow and such a great supporter for us. I really appreciate all of what he does. He is an amazing, amazing, talented artist, and definitely go check out everything that they're doing over at Heart and Fire Productions because it's awesome, including this, what we've now deemed as our first annual tradition here at GoIndieNow. If you missed it last year, not to fret, it's here again. Here's Hans Crippleton's Christmas Special, our short film for this episode and for every year-end episode that we do until GoIndieNow is no more, which we hope is never. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful New Year's. If you're watching this live, Happy New Year to all of you, and we'll see you in 2018. But remember, it's always time to go indie now, no matter what year it is. All right. Bye.
Well, it's time to spruce this tree up. Don't need that. Don't need that. Don't need that. What we got here is cripple pickle. Here you go, Snowflake. Now use a pickle flake. No stirring. Not even a mouse. But I got one extra pickle to dangle in front of my mouth. Ooh, Hans is gonna want one of them. What's this? What we got here? Oh, it opens up. What are these things here? Tea was the night before Christmas. When all throughout the house. All through the house. I'm getting it, Haunted. Not a creature was stirring. Not even a moose? He's like a Hans Manian devil.
I'll tell you what, Cousin Bumpkin. Ain't nothing good this year. Unless you want Hans in the box. Say, Cousin Bumpkin, it's important to remember the true meaning of Christmas. It's about eating sweeties, getting drunk. You just gotta drink more. That's all you gotta do. It makes the family visits better, the whole shebang.
Mama, come on, Santa Claus.
That's all there is to it. If you ain't having a good Christmas, it's cause you ain't drinking enough. Pour some sugar.
Oh my God.
That's not Santa Claus.
What the heck are you doing in my house? Get out of my house! Get out of here! I want to go to the house! Get out of my house! Get out of my house!
Get out!
911 emergency.
All units be advised we have a pursuit in progress. Units on non-essential calls directed to clear and stand by to assist. Essential to all units. Officers require assistance.
Roger that. 1071 received. Aerial pursuit unit, you're clear to engage.